Our journey begins in Canada, right on the edge of Alberta and British Columbia, on the border of the United States and Montana. We are in Waterton Lakes National Park, which is just adjacent to Glacier. This is one of my most favorite national parks that I have ever been to in my life. All of the fun of the others, all of the beauty, but with significantly less people. From here, we will start the Great Divide Trail, which traverses the Canadian Rockies from the US border, heading north 1,200 kilometers, or about 750 miles through the rugged Canadian mountains.
International boundary. Canada.
United States. We are in Canada from now on. Wow. What do you think?
That's great.
So the border between the United States and Canada. Canada off to my right. This is a special monument because this is the northern terminus of the 3,000-mile Continental Divide Trail. It is also the beginning of the Pacific Northwest Trail, which travels over 1,000 miles to the west. And it is the beginning of our trail, the Great Divide, which travels 1,200 kilometers north of here. Get to swim in a lake, say hi to some tourists on some boats driving by, and begin our long hike north into the wilds of Canada.
Should we go swimming?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've heard of this trail for a long time, and I just never thought that I was actually ready for it. It seemed extremely hard and out of reach. Hello, bear.
Hello there.
What you doing, bear? And I guess it's time to find out if that's true. It's time to see what it's like out here. Finally, I feel ready. We begin our journey on July 21st. A pretty perfect start date in my mind. It's late enough in the year where we won't have to deal with any snow in the high country, but it's still early enough so that we can take this trip at whatever pace we want without concern of an early winter stopping our hike short. We hope to complete this trip in about 6 weeks and be done sometime in September. It's a very small window for such a long hike this far north, and definitely required some careful planning just to figure out what would be best. I think in a lot of ways this trail can be as hard as you want it to be, and certainly pushing the seasons in either direction will add a ton of challenge to your trip. I've heard this trail described as somewhere in between the Continental Divide and a full-blown route. Maybe in a lot of ways, this trail is most similar to how the CDT used to be 10 or so years ago, using a lot of pre-existing trails and linking them all with small cross-country sections. Though most of this hike there is a well-defined path, there are still many sections without any markings at all, and many other sections which have zero trail at all, where you must find your own way through the mountains.
Oh.
Yeah. Wow. There are seemingly 100 different alternate routes you could take, which all differ wildly from the main route. Some significantly harder, off-trail, involving a lot of exposure or scrambling on loose rock. Some that are easier, along the lines of following an ATV path or long forgotten road. These things do add to the challenge and fun, however, since after all, a lot of why we do these kinds of trips is for the freedom. To get away from the roads and cities, away from our phones and people, to be out in the wilderness, alone with ourselves. The GDT does have an organization behind it, which is dedicated to the growth and maintenance, passionate about building and finding new trail and routes which would be better. They do incredible work, and it's amazing to see firsthand how much this trail is developing. Even more impressive is how extremely small this group of people is, tasked with the monumental job of completing this footpath. As one of the newest long-distance hikes in the world, it's incredible how much they have done. Even just 3 years ago, there were half the resources available as there is now. 5 years ago, and the trail was entirely different as what friends of mine had done in the past. New sections are being made, found, and changed all the time for the better. So for now, this is still a very wild experience. It always will be in regards to the remoteness of the landscape, the animals which are ever present in this environment, the weather one has to contend with, and the physical challenge of hiking through these mountains for nearly 2 months on end. But it is really nice to see how this trail improves by leaps and bounds year after year, thanks to the Great Divide Trail Association. Especially in regards to information, as the lack of, compared to a trail like the Pacific Crest, really adds to the difficulty in a significant way. As of now, this hike is split into 7 sections, the final 2 being the hardest by far. The rest are not easy by any means, but by comparison, that's how it goes. Sections A and B are just getting started in my mind, while C, D, and E are characterized by the national parks they pass through, most notably Banff and Jasper. And then, each hiker is thrown to the wolves for those final 2 stretches. The first 150-kilometer section went about as planned, with one little hiccup along the way. There's a 15-kilometer dry stretch along the very physically demanding La Coulette Ridge. We each had about 3 liters for it, which unfortunately was no match for a record heat kind of day. We both ran out of water hours before we would find more, and had to skip a really cool alternate route because of this. So, if I have any advice for those starting this trail, carry at least 4 liters capacity just to give you flexibility. You may even want more. Section B, however, is where things really start to go wrong for us. The day after leaving town for our 7-day, 200-kilometer stretch to the next town, I realize that I am sick. The day after, my partner Sprocket realizes the shoes she's wearing are giving her shin splints. And the day after that, and now Sprocket is also sick, along with full-blown shin splints. There was a moment when I turned around to make sure she was still behind me, only to see her moving at a snail's pace, wearing nothing but her socks and mumbling something about plague. We were utterly in the very middle of nowhere, with not even a hint of cell service, and both now heavily rationing food in case we need to stretch our 7-day supply into 10.
Its girlfriend was ahead.
I feel like I could pick it up.
Hello.
At some point, I saw on the map that we could take a side trail to a road where we would hopefully find traffic to help us into town. This turned into a very long hitchhike, which led to 3 days off, new shoes for Sprocket, and some much needed rest for us both before returning to the trail the way we had come days before. It also put a sour tone on Section B, which is too bad, as just a few years ago, this stretch was entirely a roadwalk, and now the GDTA has made this wonderful trail instead. About 200 kilometers of footpath that otherwise hadn't existed. Another example of how much this hike changes from year to year. So from feeling like we may need to quit this hike due to some ill-fitting shoes, to now continuing to move forward is an incredible feeling. We really are just getting started, and the best has not yet even sort of to begun. We are extremely happy to have illness behind us now, and hopefully Sprocket's shin splints do not return. There's a lot of really amazing scenery and things to come, and we really don't want to miss any of it. I've heard of this trail for so many years, and I've always dreamed of doing it. Having friends that did it in the past that told legend and tale of how amazing it is. That if you're going to do anything, you should do this one. Section B concludes in a provincial park where we will buy our food from a small little convenience store and prepare to enter the next section, Banff National Park. Canada's most popular and certainly most famous national park of them all.